Hi all, I'm Becky from the Hypothesis Customer Success team. As you join today's Zoom session, I am going to go ahead and promote you to panelist so that you can unmute yourself and ask questions if and when they come up. So you will get that notification from Zoom telling you that I'm promoting you to panelist. With that being said, feel free to leave your camera off. No pressure today. We'll give everyone a minute or so to join today's session before I kick things off officially. I will say, if it's helpful for you, you can go ahead and I'll walk through the steps of how to add Hypothesis as an external tool to a reading in Moodle. So if you're the kind of person that wants to follow along, you could go ahead and log into your own Moodle, where you could maybe create a practice trial hypothesis enabled reading. If you want to go ahead and do that, you could log into your account now. If not, you're welcome to just follow along and watch the steps that I show you, and then you can use our guides to follow those steps outside of today's session. While we wait to see if anyone else pops in today, if you wanted to go ahead and in the chat, introduce yourself. If you want to share your name, your school, the discipline that you teach or the role that you have at your school, as well as if you have any experience with social annotation, whether that's with Hypothesis or another tool. And I do just encourage you to post in the chat to everyone, although right now we're just a very tiny group today. Great. Well, it does look like it's just the three of us in here today, so I'll go ahead and officially kick things off since we're 4 minutes past. To officially introduce myself, I'm Becky George from the Hypothesis Customer Success team. Today, I'll try to keep things short and sweet for you. So I will walk through, I'll discuss what Hypothesis is, how specifically to use Hypothesis in Moodle, and then I'm happy to also answer any questions that come up. So feel free, you can post those in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask those as well. Like I said, today will be a short and sweet session. Try to get to the point of showing you how to get started with using Hypothesis for social annotation in your Moodle courses. But know that beyond that, our team is here to support you however we can beyond today's session. So after today's session, if you give it a try and you do have any questions or you want to talk more about ways in which you might want to incorporate it in your courses or with the teachers that you work with, please don't hesitate to reach out. That is what our team is here for. So feel free, interrupt me with any questions that you do have. Otherwise, you can also throw them in the chat. So I'll just go ahead and share this quote with you. It's one we particularly like at Hypothesis because I think it encapsulates the purpose of social annotation. So if you want to go ahead and take a moment to read it to yourself. So we all want our students to think critically about the text, engage with the text. We also want our students to think viewed or visible to us, the instructors, also their peers as well in the course. So usually marginalia represents the individual thoughts and interactions with the text, but Hypothesis allows what's in students' heads, what's in your heads to be shared with others. So sometimes you'll hear this called our motto. Someone recently called it our motto in an article, and that Hypothesis can be a great tool for helping make your reading more active, more visible, and more social. So not only are students just reading or skimming the text, but it's forcing them to become more active with their thinking and their learning if they're annotating while they're reading. Hypothesis can also be a great tool for making their thinking more visible to themselves while they read, as well as to you, the instructor. There's a quote that's not on here, but I believe it's from a Ohio State professor, and she shares that a hypothesis is like a window into students' thoughts and understandings. So I'm sure we've all been in the scenario where you ask students a question, whether that's virtually or in person, and you sort of get those crickets and you're not really sure, did they not do the reading? Do they not understand the reading? So it can be a great way to have that insight into students' thoughts and understandings. It makes the reading visible to them while they're reading, but also to the instructor, as well as to their peers who can interact with each other's annotations. And then the parts that's particularly near and dear to our hearts at Hypothesis is that it's a social annotation tool. So no longer are those thoughts, those questions, those ideas only visible to the reader themselves, as if you were writing in a paper copy of the text, but they're also visible to everyone in the course, and it can really become a collaborative learning experience. Just some other reasons that digital annotation can be beneficial for you and your students is that it can be a great way to focus on student-centered learning. So it's the student's responsibility to read, to create their annotations. It may give you, it may allow you to spend less time explicitly telling students what to do, and instead spend more time asking them questions, provoking their thinking, motivating them to ask their own questions. We hear a lot that Hypothesis can be a great tool for building community, whether that's happening digitally or you're then able to build community around the annotations when you're in person. We see with that, also we see Hypothesis being used across a variety of environments, whether those annotations are taking place asynchronously or synchronously. We're hearing from instructors they're using Hypothesis in both their online courses, their in-person courses, as well as those hybrid courses that have some sort of combination of that. And then just coming back to that idea of making the thinking visible again. So it can be a great way to make thinking visible to others, which can lead to potential change in students' thinking and learning. And hopefully that idea of thinking together can lead to cognition across different contexts. Just note that these resources are here for you to come back to. So I've even worked with some instructors who've used some of these resources as their first annotation assignment. So it can be a great way to get students comfortable using the tool in a lower stakes way, where they're not trying to annotate and try to understand a more complex academic article, but instead they're learning about how to annotate while they're practicing using the tool. So this first one is a great guide that includes some tips for students on how to annotate. We also have a guide here that walks you through the different annotation types. So creating an annotation and then the replies. Multimedia can be a great way to add additional level of engagements. So maybe students are making connections with the text and they're linking out to an external source, or they're adding an image that relates to the text that they're reading about, or even if it's a super particularly academically complex concept, students are linking out, or you're linking out to maybe YouTube videos or something that explains the concept further in another modality. And then for those of you that are using it with your students, these last two resources are great for both instructors and those working in like centers of teaching and learning and so on, as there's some ideas for use and things we're seeing other institutions do with Hypothesis as well. So know that these are all links that you can come back to later. And let's talk specifically about Hypothesis in Moodle. So the great thing about Hypothesis in Moodle is that you, as the instructor, all you have to do is add Hypothesis to your course readings in Moodle. You don't have to create accounts for students. Students don't have to create accounts for themselves. All of that is automatic based on the course that they're in Moodle. So that saves you a lot of steps. That is if you've ever heard of our wild or our public version of Hypothesis. There are additional steps that are required if you choose to use Hypothesis outside of the LMS or outside of Moodle. And that would be you'd have to create accounts. All users would have to have some sort of browser extension. You'd have to create private groups if you wanted the annotations to be private. Where if you use Hypothesis in Moodle, all of that is already done for you. No need to create accounts. And then it's a private group based on the course. So you'll see here with the example that anyone that were to annotate this poem would be, it would be available for anyone in this Poetry 101 course. And then if you choose to, you can also enable evaluation and grade annotation sets in Moodle. So you'll see here, if you choose to enable grading, you have the option to select individual students from the dropdown. And when you do that, you would just see their annotations in the sidebar. And then you could choose to give them a grade. So even if you choose not to assign any sort of point value to the annotations themselves, the grading toolbar can be handy for just selecting individual students and seeing just their annotations. Two questions before I walk through the steps of how to add hypothesis to your course readings in Moodle. Two questions that come up a lot are, what can you annotate and what can you include in your annotations? So that first question here is, what can you annotate? Currently with Hypothesis, you can annotate any publicly available websites or PDFs. By publicly available, that does mean that it can't be hidden behind a set of credentials or a paywall. So let's just take New York Times as an example. When you get those notifications that maybe you need to log in to view any more of your articles because you've used up your free allotted articles for the month, that is an example of a resource that you wouldn't be able to use with Hypothesis. Obviously, there's a workaround where you could turn any of those resources that are hidden behind credentials into a PDF and add it to Moodle and annotate with your students that way. You would just want to make sure that you're abiding by any copyright policies at your institution. And then we're seeing more and more OER, open education resources, used with Hypothesis. So as they're named, they truly are open and don't require a login or a set of credentials. And so as long as they're publicly available URLs, you can annotate those OER text as well. Note that we do have some other sources coming in the works. Our product and engineering teams are currently working on ebook and online textbook integrations, as well as other library resources like JSTOR and so on. So know that those resources will eventually be able to be annotated with Hypothesis, but that is currently in the works. And then what can you put in an annotation? So typically, as one would expect, you can annotate using text. So you would select text to annotate, and then you can add your annotation with text. However, I briefly mentioned multimedia can be a great way to add additional level of engagements with the text, make those connections. And so you can go ahead and you could have students add images, videos, may not be applicable to any of you in here, but you could use annotations. You can tag your annotations, which can be a great way to organize or categorize annotations. You can even add emojis as well. So lots of different use cases there. We do actually have a workshop in November coming up on using multimedia and annotations. So that would be a great one to check out if you're interested in hearing some ways that we're seeing instructors use it, as well as also just walk through the steps of how to go ahead and annotate. And I'm going to pause there because I do see some questions in the chat. So Jim, if those articles are hidden behind, like if they're single sign-on, so they're linking out to resources, and the only way students are able to access them in Moodle is because behind the scenes is like a single sign-on experience to access those resources, that wouldn't work. So it would have to be a publicly available PDF. If I'm misunderstanding your question, let me know.
Yeah, I'm thinking about we have access to, through the library, we can get journal articles that we've subscribed to. Now we can download those as a PDF. So if we put that PDF in Moodle, students could view it. I mean, that's one of the ways we distribute articles for reading. Can they then annotate that PDF in Moodle? Like,
yeah, as long as if you've exported it, so if you I'm going to just use JSTOR as an example. If you go to JSTOR, export a PDF, add that PDF when you add Hypothesis to the course or to that reading, then you could annotate that PDF.
So,
Currently, you don't have the ability. I don't know if like in Blackboard and Canvas, they have files like where you can store PDFs in the LMS itself. Do you use that with Moodle? Because we don't currently have an integration with like a Moodle file storage.
oh yeah, we can add a resource to Moodle, which can be a file or a PDF. So we could, in theory, we could post this on, say, Google Docs, and then they could annotate it. We just have
So
to.
Google Docs wouldn't be considered a publicly available website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Even if it's shared publicly, it couldn't be.
yeah. It would
Okay.
have to be a PDF or a publicly available website that anyone could access, like regardless of the change in permissions.
So I'm not quite sure if we download a PDF from a journal article, is there any way we can put that into Moodle and allow annotation with Hypothesis?
Yeah, so when you add PDFs, currently you have the option to, when you, and I'll show you what the step looks like, you have the option to add a PDF from either Google Drive or from your device.
Yeah.
So if that PDF is stored in Google Drive or like it's just in your downloads or documents folder, you can add it when you create your hypothesis enabled reading.
Okay, but if we just add a resource to Moodle that is a PDF file, that couldn't be annotated with Hypothesis then.
You have to go through certain steps to add,
Okay.
like to tell Hypothesis which reading we're supposed to be accessing. So I think maybe it'll
Yeah, okay, I'll just
some...
thanks. I won't distract you further. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I think when
I'll
I show
see
the
if
steps,
I get it when you come through, when you show.
Yeah, I think when I show the steps of how to enable Hypothesis on a reading in Moodle, hopefully that'll help clarify. And then to answer your other question, students, so currently right now you can only annotate text. So the way that Hypothesis works is that you select text and then you have the option to create your annotation. So currently you can't annotate videos from Vimeo or YouTube. You could add a video in your annotation from Vimeo or YouTube, but you can't annotate the video itself. So here are some resources. The next steps that I'll go through are how to add Hypothesis to a reading in Moodle, but know that these guides are here for you to come back to, including these videos that walk you through the steps. So no need to memorize anything. And just let me know if you have any other questions when I walk through the steps. So if you are in your Moodle course, the first thing you want to do is go ahead and turn on editing. It should be, typically I see it in orange in the upper right hand. You'll go ahead and turn editing on. Once you turn editing on, you will have the option to add an activity or resource. Once you select activity or resource, you're going to select external tool. And sometimes this is shaped a little differently. Sometimes you see it more of a horizontal box. Sometimes you see more vertical, but you'll select external tool. It looks like the little green puzzle piece, if you will. Once you select external tool, it will prompt you to enter an activity name here. So that would just be whatever the name of your reading is, or whatever you wanted the activity to be named. Then from the pre-configured tool, your select hypothesis. So hypothesis will be probably one of the many options that you have available, depending on how many external tools your institution has. So you would select hypothesis from there. Then you have the option to enable grading. So totally up to you if you choose to go that route. I work with instructors who do assess students' annotation. Some use it as a participation grade. Some just look at it for completion, and some really just see it as a part of the learning process. They're not assessing it at all. So totally up to you. And then you have the option to save and display. So you'll select save and display. Once you select save and display, you'll click on the reading. And it will ask where you're, so you haven't yet, you've named your activity, you've added hypothesis as a tool. The step that you yet haven't done is added hypothesis, told hypothesis or Moodle where that reading is coming from. So once you click on the reading again, it's going to ask where your reading is coming from. So you can select a URL of the web page or PDF, or you can select a PDF from Google Drive. I did mention that you can also add PDFs that are stored on your device. You would still select PDF from Google Drive. Once you do that, it'll prompt you to log into a Google account, but it doesn't have to be a Google account where any files live. And then you'll be able to upload from there. So you can toggle back and forth between Google Drive and upload. So if you have those PDFs stored on your desktop or your documents folder or your downloads folder, you could add them to annotate with hypothesis there. Any questions about the steps for adding hypothesis? And here it's linked in the slide deck, but I did just go ahead and put a guide to the steps in the chat so that you have those as well, easily accessible.
So when you select the Google Drive and then you select upload, it actually uploads the PDF into Moodle. It doesn't continually need access to your drive anymore.
That's correct.
Okay, so that answers the question I had. So if we download something to our hard drive, we can go through these steps. It doesn't actually have to live on Google Drive where it would be open to the public, which would contravene our
your policy of like
our
library resources,
copyright policies. Yeah. So
yep, exactly.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Yeah, that's clarified it for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And students would never know like where the source is coming from. They would just see the PDF with the hypothesis toolbar. I said that funny, laid over it.
Could they download the PDF from? They
can, because the PDF viewer still is available. So let me see if I have it.
And in the activity description, we could put the bibliography information and all the source information from that
exactly
in the Moodle activity description. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and this may not apply to you, Jim, but I did meet with a school last week who they still want those clicks through library resources. So what they're doing is they're adding the link to access the resource via like single sign-on to the library resource in the Moodle description, but then they're still going in and accessing the PDF version, if that's something your library keeps track of, those like clicks versus exporting from the library resource.
I'll have to check with our librarian on that.
Yeah, some are very particular about that. It's just a way of tracking for them. So we get that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. And thanks for confirming, Ingrid, in the chat. No questions. I do encourage you, now that you know the steps too, and Jim, this may not apply because you all don't yet have it added or installed in Moodle. But Ingrid, it should be there for you. So I just encourage you, if you get a chance, I know that's a lot to ask, but to go ahead and just try adding it to one of your course readings in your Moodle, in one of your Moodle courses, and play around with it, see what it's like. You can go ahead and try creating annotations. I would say one of the many great things about hypothesis is once you've added hypothesis to a course reading, the tool functionality is exactly the same, whether you're a student or an instructor. So creating annotations is the same. So that can be good to get an idea of what it's like for students, as well as what it's like for you as the instructor if you practice annotating. Just something to note about PDFs is that you do want to make sure that any of your PDFs that you use do have that OCR layer, or optical character recognition. Very simply, that means that the text is recognizable as text. So if you go and scan a textbook and turn it into a PDF, it actually turns that into an image and not into selectable text. So you'll just want to make sure that the PDFs that you use have selectable text so that students can annotate. We also just encourage that you use selectable text with all of your PDFs so that any students using those screen reading devices, the PDF is accessible for them. We do have a free tool that you can use to add that OCR layer. A lot of schools also have ability to do that using Adobe Acrobat Pro, or even some of those, I've heard some scanners in libraries are able to OCR it as you're scanning it. So a couple different options there. Our team is also happy to help if you have any questions about that. We can help you with that. And then we're coming up on time, and like I said, I wanted to make this short and sweet for you all so you could just jump in and give it a go if you haven't already. So I just wanted to share some resources with you. Know that our team is here to support you both technically and pedagogically. On the technical side of things, if you do have any questions, we have a knowledge base or help center articles that you can access. Also, please don't hesitate to reach out to our support team if you have any technical questions, you're running into an issue, something's not functioning as expected. Hopefully that won't ever be the case. But if that does happen, you can email our support email address. And then I just encourage you to do that from your school email address. So that way we know, okay, we know you're using Moodle. We do also put your tickets to the front of the line if your school is partnering with us. And then on the pedagogical side of things and implementation side of things, our success team is here to help you however we can. So we have some guides for using Hypothesis. We also do offer one-on-one instructional consultation. So if whether it's you or a colleague of yours is interested in even a quick demo or a chat further about social annotation in their courses, feel free to pass this resource on. I do encourage you to check out our Liquid Margins show. It's a podcast style video show we host about every 2 weeks, typically a couple times a month on Friday mornings if you're in Pacific time. Otherwise, it might be Friday afternoon for you. And it's a great way to hear about how other instructors are using Hypothesis really across North America and the world. And then we do have some other workshops coming up in November. Those will be more pedagogical and implementation focused, such as talking about multimedia, talking about creative ways to use social annotation. So we'd love to see you at one of those as well if you want to just push your use of Hypothesis a little bit further. And then I'm just going to leave you with our Success email address if you do have any questions or you want any further support outside of today's workshop. That's what we're here for. I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions you have. Otherwise, I hope this was a helpful introduction to the tool for you, and I look forward to seeing the ways in which you all use it in your courses or with instructors at your schools. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This is another step in my journey. I'm really enthusiastic about social annotation. I'm trying to get some of my colleagues in our center. I did a demonstration where I created dummy accounts,
okay,
and had laptops all signed in, so it was really easy. And one person said, "Oh my goodness, this is so great. I tried for an hour before in our university course, and I couldn't get anything, had trouble with the login or sign in, and I had created all these things." But I'm really, really hoping our IT and our Moodle host will get things going to make it so much easier. But I like annotating in the wild because I love the community.
Yeah, it really does take reading to the next level, and it gives you that.
But I also use it for personal bookmarks.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Have a
nice to see you.
Great day. Bye.
Thank you. You as well. Bye now.